Mike the Truth Jackson here with another edition of Fighters Talk, and today it's a special edition. I'm here with the man who's arguably the greatest commentator in MMA.
Arguably. Since when am I arguably?
There may be some people who try to put hands on me if I didn't say that.
You're lucky I like you, Mike.
I'm glad he likes me. I'm here with the man himself, the voice, Michael Schiavello. How are we feeling today, sir?
Mixed emotions, to be honest with you. You know, heading back home to Australia next week. Tomorrow night is my final show on Access TV. Happy to be going back to Australia after living in the US for so many years. But, you know, sad to leave this aspect of my career. Sad to leave Pat Miletich especially behind here, breaking up one of the best partnerships, I think, in mixed martial arts broadcasting. You know, Ron Kruk as well, and the Access TV crew that are on the road every week that become really second family members to you. So there's that sadness. You know, there's always this sadness of saying goodbye and not knowing what the future is going to hold. But there's happiness as well about getting to go back home. So really, I guess you could say torn.
Right. What the reason for you going back home?
You know, my wife is pregnant with our second child. She's expecting another son in July. So we raised our first child. My first boy is 3 years old now, so he was born in America. He's a little American-Australian, half and half. But second one, it's just, you know, it's easy to do it back home where we've got the support of family and friends, and I want the boys to grow up knowing their family and knowing their grandparents. You know, everyone's getting older, no one's getting younger, and we don't have that support system here in the States. It was a bit difficult with our first child when you've got no one around. You know, we go back and do it in Australia where I know it's safe and we have that support system, and it makes a big difference. And the schooling in Australia is great, the lifestyle is great, and nothing against that in the US. But Australia is always going to be our spiritual home. You know, to return home there and raise the family there is really what my wife and I decided we wanted to do.
And that's completely understandable. Now, for those who haven't followed your career the entire time, what brought you into the U.S. for MMA commentary, and how did you stick with it for so long?
You know, I first commentated in the US was K1 actually back in 2006, I think it was. K1 used to do shows at the Bellagio in Las Vegas, and then you know, so I was the K1 commentator worldwide for 11, 12 years, whatever it was. In 2008, as the story goes, I was commentating the K1 World Grand Prix in Tokyo, and it was broadcast on HDNet. I think it was the first show broadcast on the old HDNet. And Mark Cuban was watching at 4 o'clock in the morning, apparently live, and I made some joke in my usual style, and Cuban rang Andrew Simon the next day and said, "Sign this crazy Aussie, I want him to work for us." And I remember still getting a phone call when I was going through LAX on my way to Jamaica to do a show, a Muay Thai show back in 2009, and Andrew Simon calling me, said we wanted to, you know, sign you up, and been with HDNet and Access TV ever since. And you know, so it's coming up on 8 years now, and moved over here in 2011. I was traveling back and forth from Australia to the US every 10 days, which is an astronomically long flight. Not only the 16-hour flight from Melbourne to LA, but then bouncing off to do, you know, Houston shows for Legacy and shows on the East Coast and other Midwest shows. So just 2 days of non-stop traveling. It takes its mental and its physical effect on you. So we decided to move out here to cut out all that travel in 2011, and that's really, yeah, what brought me over here.
One, I didn't know that. I always thought that you just lived in the States and you were flying around with the Access TV crew. I can only imagine what kind of toll that type of traveling would do for someone. I mean, you see guys out here all the time, even the Access TV crew, they're all over the country. But it's just that, they're all over the country.
I calculated once, and that was back in like 2011, 2012. We weren't traveling even half as much as we do now. You know, we're only doing 20 shows a year. But I calculated that within the space of that year, I'd done the equivalent mileage of going to the moon and back twice. It was something just ridiculous figure for either 12 or 18 months, including all the shows we were doing in Japan, doing the Dream and the K1 and the K1 out of Europe, and all the flying over a 12, 18-month period was like to the moon and back. It was ridiculous.
Moon and back, Alice.
Yeah.
Now, we've known you've had quite a few verbal sparring partners.
Right.
What does it say? I mean, because everyone's different. You know, obviously you've built a great relationship with Pat, so that is pretty steady. But there have been times where you kind of had someone come in and out.
Sure.
Outside of Pat, who's one memorable partner that you've commentated with?
You know, I get asked this question a lot, and I think this answer, I've never been asked about it by an interviewer like yourself. It's mostly a personal thing that people ask, hey, who's the best you've worked with outside of Pat? Because they know that I'll immediately say Pat is the best. The answer is, and it didn't last for long, it was only a few shows we did together, and it was King of the Cage when H.D. Nett and Mark Burnett had their idea to try and build up King of the Cage. It was Jason Mayhem Miller. Mayhem was, in my opinion, the best commentator, again outside of Pat, I've ever worked with. That guy's personality, his voice, the way he could analyse fights and communicate them in a really funny and exciting way to the layman, and him and I gelled so perfectly. I love Mayhem. I loved spending time with him. I loved becoming friends with the guy, and as a commentator he is brilliant, and hopefully, you know, if he can get past his craziness and all these episodes he seemed to have and get back into maybe a commentary gig, he'd be spectacular because he was outstanding. I loved Mayhem.
Hey, taking we're in his backyard. He lives not too far from here. For you, I mean, is commentary something like that? Commentating, does it come natural, or is this something that a lot of people have to work at?
No, you know, well, for me it always came very naturally. I taught myself everything I know. I didn't go to university or college for any of this stuff. I have nothing higher than a high school education. You know, year 12, that was it for me. But commentary is something I always loved. I began commentating when I was 15 or 16-year-old on track and field. Then I went into soccer, did a lot of soccer on radio when I was much younger as well. Did some Australian rules football and some other various sports. Got into commentating kickboxing when I was 20 years old. Began working on TV when I was 21 for Fox Sports in Australia, so really, really young. And I've been at this for a long time. I began commentating mixed martial arts. My first one was in 95, I think. So it's always come naturally, but that said, it's something you've got to work at to really develop your style and stay true to that style and consistently improve yourself, because it's a very niche, small industry. You know, there's only a certain amount of guys in the industry, particularly the fight industry. Right. You've always got people nipping at your heels, waiting for an opportunity. So you don't want to be off your game and trying to allow someone else through. You've got to stay above and above and above and keep raising the bar. And that's always been a challenge to me. It's been a challenge over the years here working for Access TV to take these regional shows, CES, Legacy, RFA, LFA, Titan we used to do, XFC we used to do, MFC, and commentate them in such a way that you think there's nothing else that matters in the MMA world during that broadcast right there than that show you're watching. Right. And build up the main events of Legacy or RFA or MFC or XFC to be main events that sound comparable to a UFC main event or a Bellator main event, you know, and give those guys that honour, that justice of building them up. To me, that was a real art form, that I could make the guys like, you know, your Jeff Rexroads and your Daniel Pinedas and early Sage Northcotts and those guys sound like superstars before they even became that big.
Now, you may be the one who's seen the most fights. Is there one particular fighter that stands out to you that will just last in your memory forever?
My favourite fighter, I don't think it's any secret, is probably Bada Hari. You know, love him as a friend. There's that crazy side to Bada as well, so unpredictable in character and in the ring. And I think that's what makes him so magnetic a personality to watch. And his fight style is just everything I love about fighting. He goes in there, balls to the wall, tries for the knockout. It's knockout or get knocked out. So for him, he's always been my favourite fighter, and I've loved commentating him over the years. And, you know, there's been guys like Minowa Man back in Dream, who I fell in love with. And, of course, him and I had a very special relationship. You know, he was my guy in Dream. And then on a local level over here, man, there's just too many to remember. You know, there's guys like Matt Bissett at CES and Greg Ribello at CES who I absolutely, you know, love commentating those guys. Boston Salmon for LFA. Sabina Marzo's a good up-and-comer that got to keep an eye on. Andrea Lee, I'll miss commentating her. I love commentating her fights. Holly Holm, loved commentating her before she became big. You know, there's so many, but overall, it's got to be Bada Hari.
When you announced that you were, you know, leaving America for the most part here, the social media blew up. Everyone was definitely sad to see you go, and we saw a lot of people share their memories. You know, and obviously my anus, maybe one of the greatest ones. For you, is there obviously the Goodnight Irene is something that's known worldwide, but is there a quote or a saying for you that just you'll remember?
The Mayonnaise fight, because it went viral so quickly, you know, that thing overnight just went viral. I was on the Jimmy Fallon show and the Howard Stern show, and I did interviews with radios all over the world. You do a Google search and it's popped up in all these newspapers and magazines. That was crazy. 2 fights that we had, and for a guy called Mayanus to fight a guy called Salmon just lent itself to superb commentary. There's been a lot of memorable ones. I think if you ask Pat the same question, he'll mention this one. When we commentated Fallon Fox, we did 2 of Fallon Fox's fights. And for those that don't know, Fallon Fox is the famously transgender fighter, So I remember opening that show in Miami, and I thought I've got to explain very succinctly and very quickly to our audience why we're commentating this Fallon Fox that no one had ever heard of, and she was like 2-1 or 2-0 or something in a main event, right? So I turned the camera and it's the opener. I remember Darryl Ewald, late Darryl Ewald, our EP, giving me the cue, and I say, she was born a he. And then 22 years later, he became a she. So just in that very, right? Pat's like, I can't believe you said that on TV. It's like, I don't see anything wrong with it. I literally just explained in as few words as I could why this person deserves our attention in the main event of a national broadcast. So I think that's one that'll always sort of stick in my mind.
I definitely remember that.
Hi, fella.
You're going back home. Is there any plans to continue commentary, or we're doing something else now?
No, this is surprising, Mike, because a lot of people on Twitter are wishing me goodbye and saying it's my retirement. I never said I was retiring. I just said I was moving back home. We'll see what opportunities present themselves. A lot of guys back home, and a lot of kickboxing and mixed martial arts. Muay Thai is still huge in Australia, so I know all the guys back home, and maybe get another opportunity down there, but we'll see what pops up. But definitely it's not a retirement. Some people are tweeting like I'm dying. I know what my eulogy is going to be like one day, but it's not the case. I'm not retiring. I'm just going back to Australia, and I don't know beyond family at the moment what the future professionally is going to hold.
There you have it. Man, it's been a pleasure.
Me too.
And an honor to call you a friend.
You too, brother. Thank you very much
Definitely
for all your support over the years and the great job you do. And keep boxing, mate. And I look forward to watching your stuff from Australia. The truth.